Good morning, everybody, and welcome to In the Loop Weekend Ag Talk brought to you by Alphen Insurance Agency. We hope you've all had a great week. We had a very busy week and informative week over at the North Carolina Commodities Conference in Durham. Let's jump over and look at the markets and see what happened on Friday after an interesting WASDE report on Thursday. Corn added to post WASDE gains on Friday. March corn closing the day at 675. December corn closing the day at 598 and three quarters. Wheat traded in both directions post WASDE report, with March wheat closing out the week at 743 and three quarters. July wheat closed out the wheat at 753 and three quarters. Up today after an ugly finish post WASDE report, March cotton closed the week at 82.29. December cotton closed the week at 80.79. When we look at soybeans, old crop was up and new crop slightly down, with March soybeans finishing the week at 15.27 and three quarters, and November soybeans finishing the week at 13.93. As I mentioned in the introduction, we spent the week at the North Carolina Commodities Conference, the 33rd annual North Carolina Commodities Conference. The Corn Growers Association of North Carolina, the North Carolina Cotton Growers Association, North Carolina Small Grain Growers Association, and the North Carolina Soybean Producers Association met in Durham this week for their annual business meetings. The event also included seminars related to each crop and the latest from NC Extension. The keynote speaker on Thursday was Mr. Ray Starling, author of Farmers versus Foodies and General Counsel of the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Commissioner Troxler addressed the convention yesterday. A few of his comments are as follows. He says that North Carolina agriculture can feed the growth we're seeing in North Carolina, but our infrastructure is not ready. Roads and power are two major areas of concern. Commissioner Troxler is meeting with representatives from Duke Power next week to discuss the effects of the rolling blackouts that we had back in December and their effects on agriculture in North Carolina. He went on to say that North Carolina recently lost a bid to get a textile plant due to some issues related to power. Commissioner Troxler says, we must look after what we have before we add more industry in North Carolina. North Carolina has added 30,000 acres into farmland conservation easements in 2022, but we're not keeping up with the pace that land is being developed. We can't continue to have a $100 billion ag industry in North Carolina if we don't have land and natural resources. Commissioner Troxler also touched on flooding in eastern North Carolina. Much of the central portion of North Carolina has turned into asphalt and concrete. This causes stormwater runoff issues that cascade as they flow east. It's been almost 20 years since North Carolina has done a major stormwater project. The last one was the Randleman Dam and Lake project almost 20 years ago. According to Commissioner Troxler, this project took over 20 years just to get permitted. When you add all those together, we're way behind when it comes to fixing the issues down east. In closing, he said that not receiving enough rainwater was not the biggest threat to North Carolina agriculture as many would think. He said that policy is the biggest threat to North Carolina agriculture. Those of us in the ag industry in North Carolina must work together and create our own stability. Applications open for NC State Fair Junior Livestock Scholarships. Youth who participated in the NC State Fair Junior Livestock competitions are eligible to apply for NC State Fair Junior Livestock Scholarships. The deadline to apply is March 1st. Up to 25 $2,000 scholarships are available in addition to one $2,500 Farm Credit of North Carolina Premier Scholarship. All youth who exhibited livestock animals at the state fair are eligible regardless of species, class, or show placement. Scholarships are good for institutions of higher learning, including community college and tech schools. Students must be enrolled in a minimum of 9 course hours. The scholarship money is raised through the State Fair's annual sale of champions, where Grand and Reserve champions are sold, along with champion got to be NC animals, and they're sold at auction. A percentage of these sales goes into the Youth Livestock Scholarship Program. High school seniors and college students will need to submit completed applications, including State Fair Junior Livestock Experience, a 500-word essay, academic achievements, and extracurricular activities. Youth are eligible to receive the scholarship a minimum of 4 times. For questions, contact Mr. Neil Bowman by email at neil.bowman@ncagr.gov. And folks, every chance you get, do all you can do to support youth livestock shows in North Carolina. It is a great way to raise youth, teach them responsibility, teach them how to win, teach them how to lose, and teach them how to get along with others. Deere reaches deal to allow farmers to repair their own equipment. Patience Hagen reported in today's Wall Street Journal that machinery manufacturer Deere & Company signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation on Sunday that the group said ensures farmers can repair their own farm equipment and take it to independent repair shops. This is big, folks. This is what many farmers have been fighting for. And we shout out and say thank you to the American Farm Bureau Federation and others for helping push this through and make this happen. When we look at WASDE highlights, I'll read a few comments from Joe Vaklovic of Standard Grain. USDA surprised the trade with a lower 2022 corn production estimate yesterday. The size of the corn crop was cut about 200 million or 1.4% harvested acres. This was a big surprise to many. When you look at soybean production number, this crop estimate was cut by 70 million bushels amid a 300,000 cut to harvested acres. This was not as big a surprise, but it also lowered the expected yield down to 49.5 bushels per acre from 50.2 bushels. When we look on the cotton side of things, USDA's update to cotton production showed a 440,000 bale jump to 14.68 million bales. That was mainly due to a 79-pound increase in yield at 947 pounds per acre average, as harvested acres were down roughly 440,000 acres. The balance sheet update saw a 700,000 increase in stocks at 4.2 million bales. This was mainly via the production increase and exports being trimmed by 250,000 bales. On the world side of things, ending stocks were up by 370,000 bales to 89.93 million bales. Also in the report, USDA cuts its Argentina crop estimates as expected. The government was conservative with their cuts compared to some of the private estimates floating around. The bean crop was pegged at 45.5 million metric tons versus 49.5 last month. Some of the exchanges and private groups in South America have printed estimates in the 37 million metric ton range this week. Argentina corn crop was pegged at 52 versus 55 last month. Both of these numbers may move up in future reports. And don't forget, Friday was the last day of trading for January soybean futures, and Monday the markets will be closed in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. When we look at other news in the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released monthly Consumer Price Index, or CPI as we call it, data yesterday. This is a reading of inflation on the customer side. Inflation rose at an annualized rate of 6.5% in December. That's down from 7.1% in November. In this cycle, inflation peaked at 9.1% in June of 2022. When we look at year-over-year changes, those leading in increases were fuel oil up 42%, gas utilities up 19%, transportation and electricity up between 14 and 15%, and food cost at home up 12%. When we look at those showing the greatest decline, gasoline is down 2%, and used cars have dropped 9% versus last year. This week, in something to consider, we want to encourage you to be looking at your break-even calculators or your budgets by crop going into 2023. Here we did an update today based off current markets, And this is Eastern North Carolina, Duplin County, specifically numbers here based off polls that we took through local fertilizer and chemical supply warehouses. Looks like the break even for wheat in the current market, 68 bushels. Double crop soybeans, break even would be 31 bushels. Full season soybeans looking at a break even of 40 bushels. Corn, 107 bushel break even, and cotton coming in this week at an 894 pound break even number. We encourage you to look at your budgets. If we can be of any help, give us a call. We'd be glad to look at those with you. You'll notice on our break even calculator, I've talked a lot about interest lately, and we have added that into the calculations this year because that is an extremely important part of factoring in what your break even costs are for this year. Thank you again for tuning in to another edition of In the Loop Weekend Ag Talk brought to you by Alphen Insurance Agency. If you're watching on YouTube, reach over there, click subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure to share it with your friends and family and encourage them to follow us and watch each week. We thank you for the farmers who are helping feed and clothe the world. And we also tell you to keep mental health a priority at home and at the farm. Hey, take time and make time for yourself every day. Always make yourself available for those around you. Give us a call. We'll come to you so you can focus on family and farming. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great weekend.